Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jackie Van Ham and my buddy Josh, bringing you all the newest news going on out here in motorcycling and power sports. We've got another great episode for you today. Thank you so much for tuning back in. If you're a regular watcher of the show, welcome back. Welcome back. No big surprise. Josh is going to talk about some dirt bikes today, and I'm going to be talking about some stuff going on out here motorcycling also. With a little bit of news, is the National Motorcycle Museum going away, or is it? And Kawasaki is bringing your ultimate inline four fantasy to the United States. Josh, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods?
So Aprilia stole something from Yamaha's playbook, so we're going to see how that plays out. And the other thing is KTM has spoken. Bad play on words, I'll get into why.
I love it. We're going to have to stay tuned for that awful dad joke and more after this word from our sponsors.
From the trails to the track, D.I.D chains are manufactured with the highest quality materials and designed to give you an optimal riding experience and are the top chain choice worldwide. When performance, quality, and consistency matter, go with D.I.D. What drives you?
Welcome back, everybody. Huge thanks to this show sponsor this week, D.I.D. So, as promised at the very beginning of the show, there has been yet more swirling around stories and rumors and talking in the comments, and all sorts of people are up in arms about the news of the National Motorcycle Museum closing. Or is it? Because here's where this story gets really interesting. The National Motorcycle Museum here in the United States indeed, sadly, is closing. However, there is another museum by the exact same name over in the UK, and British motorcycling fans were absolutely up in arms until it was cleared up that they were not talking about the National Motorcycle Museum in England. They were talking about the one here in Iowa. So unfortunately, this museum is going to be closing. It is in Anamosa, Iowa. It is a little bit of a rural-ish type area, it seems. And while this museum has been open for a handful of years, it was founded by the same folks who founded J&P Cycles in the Wayback Machine. It is sadly going to be going away in September. So there's been an awful lot of conversation about it. You still have the chance to go visit this awesome museum. However, if you want to throw that slide up, Ashley, I did try to grab a couple of pictures from the inside of the museum. They got lots of cool old bikes, of course. They even have a couple of cars. They have a great big huge airplane. They got lots of neat stuff. They relocated a handful of years to a great big abandoned Walmart on the edge of town, just to give you a little glimpse of like how huge this collection is. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit interesting. On a lot of the press releases and things floating around, the other websites, other news organizations have been reporting that this is closing due to the fact that they can no longer afford to keep the doors open. They can no longer afford to pay the limited staff they have on hand. However, there's actually an interview with Jill Parham, who is the wife of John Parham, founder of J&P Cycles, who unfortunately passed away in 2017. She did give an interview to one of the local Cedar Rapids, Iowa papers. So let's go ahead and actually get her direct quote about why the museum is closing. Jill Parham is the chairman of the board of directors. She and her husband helped get the museum going, which operates as a not-profit. Parham told TV9 the museum has struggled for many years to be financially stable. When her husband passed in 2017, Parham says she did what she could to keep the museum going. The pandemic didn't help matters, as the museum was closed at one point for nearly 3 months and never fully bounced back. The winter months have been particularly difficult. Quote, "It was a very hard decision, and it was an emotional decision because my husband and I started this together. But as I age, I want a new chapter of my life, I guess. So I actually, because we can't hardly afford any employees, I do the accounting, and now I'm doing the directing of it." So I feel like really it's kind of a perfect storm of several things happening why this museum is unfortunately closing. Jill Parham, this seemed to be a little bit of a passion of her husband, again, who passed away sadly in 2017. So now she has been left to do a lot of the heavy lifting of this sizable, substantial collection out there. And she's, wants to move on and do something different with her life. It also is right on the tail of last week's story where we talked about the Mecum auctions, where currently these very, very rare and collectible, particularly antique motorcycles, are going for huge piles of cash. This feels like a little bit of right place, right time for her to go ahead and liquidate those bikes, because indeed they will be going to auction. The motorcycles, cars, and planes that are inside the museum right now, a good chunk of will be going to auction. She will be keeping a select handful for herself, but those museum bikes and machines and John Parham's private collection will be going up for auction. We will have more details as the story breaks. I can't help but think, Josh, that with the timing of this and the museum closing in September, will this collection be going to Meekum's motorcycle auction next year in Las Vegas in the winter in January? What do you think about this story, Josh?
I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. And to me, everyone's always sad when a museum like this closes because we lose a resource. And a lot of them I know are going to go to private collections. But in the same sense, it's not like these are going to end up in the scrap heap. These aren't going to, I mean, when you saw the few pictures there, none of these are going to end up completely disappearing. They're going to be there. They're going to be floating around. Access may be limited, but in the same sense, they're still going to be around. So the fact that they're changing hands, it's always sad. The access, that's always sad to lose that. But in the same sense, the history's still going to be there. And that's something that I guess we should all be grateful for.
Yeah, for sure. And I can absolutely see a handful of these machines going to other collections floating around the United States. Bobby Haas has quite a huge collection in Dallas. There is a rumor floating around that his museum, sadly, will also be closing in the next year. That is a completely unconfirmed rumor. I do not have anything to support that. I just heard that floating around on the internet this week while we were talking about museums. But Wheels Through Time down in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, which is one of my most favorite places, there is potential for them to get snapped up and a handful of the bikes from this collection ending up down there as well. But as you said, the stewardship of these antique machines will continue. They are not going, they're not going to be, thrown in the trash. They will end up as part of other larger collections. So anyway, that's the news for the National Motorcycle Museum. I just wanted to go ahead and add a little bit of clarity and add my 2 cents to that story. I think it's fascinating. I do love an auction, and I'm excited to see, where these guys head off to, where they're living their next lives. So what do you have going on for your first story today, Josh?
So I talked about how Aprilia is stealing one from Yamaha's playbook. So back in April of 2022, we talked about this. Yamaha said, hey, we've pulled out a Dakar in that because we're not going to support a 450 that way, but we've still got the T7 and we're going to go rally raid racing. Even though Dakar won't allow it, most of the other rally raid races will allow it. So Aprilia said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. We're going to go ahead and do this and tag along with you. So one of the things that's interesting about this is Aprilia has done this before. So Aprilia started in the dirt. In 1978, they won the Cross World Championship. The second photo that I have here, if you want to put that one up, they ran Dakar in 1989 with the first version of the Touareg. So to me, that is something that's really kind of cool with that. It's going back to some of their heritage. This is the bike that they are taking. This is the newer Touareg. This is how it's going to look. That black murdered out paint scheme on this to me is just, oh my God, yes.
Yes. Yes.
So to me, this is absolutely amazing. And I mean, Aprilia too, their history in this too, they took third place in Dakar with the RXV 450. They ran that for 3 years over there. Those bikes were phenomenal. They were a twin cylinder 450, which was unheard of. They showed up with this crazy bike, crazy revs that was absolutely insane. I wish you could still get those bikes around. I've seen some of them run at the Supermoto tracks, and they are silly. I love them. The project itself is called Back to Africa because that is the goal with this, is to run a lot of those African rally raid races. Like I said, for Dakar, you can run a 450. For the other rally raids, they have classes that'll let you run bigger bikes. This is what it looked like back in 1989, which is a slight bit different than what they look like today, I think.
I love that, though. That is so brilliant.
Technology has come a long way, and I'm glad. So, but in this, they have 2 riders with it, and I'm going to butcher both of their names. There's Jacopo Cervuti, not going to get that right, and Francesco Montanari. Both of these, take a guess, Italian riders. Imagine that. like I said, this is their Back to Africa project. So this year is going to be a testing year. 2024, they are planning on going full tilt at this, and they are looking at putting themselves up on the top step of that podium. To me, I think it's very interesting that Aprilia is going to do this. They've already had bikes in testing on this. There was recently a rally raid. It's a rally raid done in Italy. It's a national one. It's not one of the FIM international ones. We've got a photo from that up here too. There's some great stuff from that, and this year is a testing year.
Oh, wow.
This is, I mean, I see a photo like this, I'm so upset that I'm sitting here instead of out on the bike. But to me, the big question in this is Aprilia has done this now, and they're bringing us their 660 to Rally Raid. Yamaha has done this and took their 660 or their 700 to Rally Raid. It's not allowed into car yet, but with Aprilia and Yamaha both doing this, my question to you, Jacqui, and to everyone else out there, do you guys think that this puts pressure on Dakar to say, you know what, we need to do a big bore class? What do you think?
Well, I do think it's interesting, and I'm seeing this movement away from the Dakar, and I'm curious if it's just because the Dakar is so much money. It is so huge. It's so massive. It's such a large investment for a lot of these teams that I'm seeing a little bit more of these like rally raid, and there was like an Echo rally raid, something or another that was going on in Africa. They unfortunately, I think, had to cancel or postpone this year, ironically, because as much as it's called the Echo, due to climate change, they had to cancel because they're having such crazy weather and they just couldn't do it. So anyway, I'm seeing a lot more interest in these a little bit, I'm going to use the word smaller, but that's not really fair because these are still very, very large. Exactly. These are still very, very large events, but they are on a slightly smaller scale. I think it's a really neat kind of return to their roots. As far as this photo on the screen, though, holy smokes, Mad Max, zombie apocalypse. I'm here for it. I love it. It is totally stunning. I love that bike. Josh, you need one. I need to ride it with you. We need to timeshare this bike. We need to go ride this in Baja. Somebody please send us a boatload of money to go do a story from Baja sharing this bike. I will even ride 2 up with you, Josh. Brace yourself. Get ready for it. Anyway, so that's what I
think we may need different suspension settings, though, Jacqui. I think I've got some tonnage on you that the suspension settings we may have to adjust.
I was just going to say, dude, you're only like 3 inches taller than me. Let's not get crazy.
But the suspension,
Yeah, I think this is rad, and you're right. It does harken back to Aprilia's roots, which might be a little bit forgotten because they get a little bit lost in the shuffle with BMW being such a huge Dakar player, Ducati now making a lot of noise, Yamaha making noise, Honda, of course, making tons of noise in that space. So I think maybe Aprilia, could maybe get forgotten about the fact that they do have roots out there. So I think it's really, a really interesting thing, and I love this. I love that Yamaha also. We talked about that story last year, the Tenere Rally raids. I think that's such a cool, neat thing, also. So maybe this is the future. Maybe they're going to start pivoting a little bit away from the bigger stuff and doing these much more focused and like regional type events. Who knows? So
win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Exactly. Race on Sunday, sell on Monday. Exactly. So while we were talking about racing on Sunday and selling on Monday, that is an excellent transition to my bike that I want to talk about that just got released this past week. And it has absolutely been burning down the internet of a very particular crew of motorcyclists. And that would be my sport bike fans. This is a really, really neat, very cool bike. This is going to be your ultimate inline 4 fantasy machine bucket list bike from the folks over at Kawasaki. This is the brand spanking new 2023 Kawasaki Ninja ZX-4RR KRT edition. Woo, that was a mouthful. I'm not going to lie. I had to read that straight off the page. So this beautiful bike, people have been chomping at the bit for this machine. So the Kawasaki Ninja 400 has been around for a while now. That news isn't new. However, that is a twin-cylinder machine. And the real sport bike nuts that think that peak sport biking, and in a way they're kind of right, really was in like the 1980s, 1990s, inline 4s that would rev to the moon, super rare and collectible machines that we did not see on this side of the pond because they were just simply too expensive. They have been chomping at the bit for the chance to have this type of bike over here. Kawasaki has listened, and they are absolutely delivering. At the heart of the ZX-4RR is going to be a liquid-cooled double overhead cam, 16-valve, inline-4, displacing 399 cc's. Bore and stroke measure 57 by 39.2 millimeter, which is almost identical to the 1990 ZX-R 400R. Again, that is kind of like peak sport bike, 1980s, 1990s for a lot of folks. From there, however, this new engine is fully modern, benefiting from more than 30 years of technological advancement, including electronics that simply didn't exist back then. Engine redline is at 1600 RPM. Wind it up, rev it to the moon. US press kit quotes torque figures at 26.5 pound per foot at 1100 RPMs. The European correspondents, however, did get different numbers, and they say that they also list the power at 77 brake horsepower without ram air, 80 brake horsepower with ram air. At least this provides with a ballpark figure, assuming that the model is the same for both markets, which it really honestly should be. So I thought this was very interesting news. Ultra lightweight cast aluminum pistons, yada yada. This is all of the good stuff. Look at this dead sexy bit of plumbing from the folks at Kawasaki. This inline 4 exhaust, absolutely gorgeous, very cool machine. They're also going to trick it out though with a little bit of computer whiz bangs. This is going to have an ECU. Similar to the unit that is in the current ZH2, it offers a level of engine management that did not even exist, of course, back in the Grand Prix days. It opens the door to a ton of rider aids that align the bike with other fully modern family members like the ZX-6R and the ZX-10R. On your screen right now, you can see that the TFT dash does also give several options, including one for the street and one that is strictly for the track. Beautiful, beautiful bike that is coming in just shy of $10,000 into the U.S. market. Josh, what do you got to say about this beautiful Kawasaki?
I'm drooling. You can't see it on camera, but I'm drooling. So, to me, there's so many wonderful things about this, and I mean, this kind of harkens back. I mean, my first sport bike was an F2 Honda 600. What's interesting about this is about 15, 16 more horsepower than that bike was. That was a 600. This is a 400. Half of the fun of something like this is wringing its absolute neck. And
Yes.
you're able to do this and still stay within a skill set, because let's face it, there is one Jonathan Ray on the planet. Everyone else is that step below. Even though as soon as we all put our leathers on, we feel like we are at this level, we are not. And so to me, this lets people, first off, it forces you to learn momentum a little bit better on the track. It's manageable enough that it is not going to bite you as hard when stuff goes sideways. And if you're on the track and you're pushing it, it's going to go sideways. So that, and the fact is too, is any bike at 16,000 RPM, any motor, I don't care if it's a weed whacker, sounds amazing. So to me, those kinds of things, like when you add all that up in here, I am super excited about this. I got to ride an FZR 400. I'm actually going to say decades ago, unfortunately, because it was so brilliant of a bike. And it was so much fun too, because you beat the brains out of it. You look down, you're doing 65, 70 miles an hour, but yet you're at 17, 18,000 RPM. And you're like, oh my God. So many things with this. They nailed it.
Yeah. First of all, it looks awesome. It's a super, super, super sexy, great looking bike.
Yep.
Very, very cool. But you're right. I love the idea that you can wind this thing up. You can wring its neck. 1600 redline. The weight on this, by the way, is or 16,000. Sorry, 16,000. Yeah. I knew what I meant. Because the weight of this is only 415 pounds, by the way. So that is really, really pretty impressive. I'm really excited about that. If you still think that is a little beefy, that exhaust right there is easily 12 pounds that can be shaved off.
That's it. 10, 12 pounds to take that off.
Yeah. Easily. So anyway, that's what's going on with the folks at Kawasaki. This has been burning down the internet a little bit. I cannot wait to hear this at full song, Josh.
Yes.
Now, what do you got for your second story?
So I said KTM has spoke. And so one of the big complaints that everyone had with the Adventure 390 was the fact that it was cast wheels. And there's all sorts of going back and forth, like, hey, there's people that have run V-Stroms for years that have cast wheels that don't have a problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you've ever been out on the trail and had to find a large enough rock to help your friend with cast wheels to beat it back into shape so you could get home, you think, I don't like the cast wheels as much. So KTM has taken with the 390 and they have finally given it spoked wheels, which I am super proud, super happy to see. It looks to me absolutely amazing. It's totally transformed the look of this bike. So now it looks like a proper adventure bike. I love that fact. I mean, cast wheels, they can look great on that Kawasaki sport bike, but there's something about them on an adventure bike that makes me ask questions.
It's not right. It's not right.
Correct. So nonetheless, the specs from this one are pretty similar to last year. It's 44 horsepower. It's 6-speed transmission with a quick shifter, 3.8 gallons worth of fuel, which it's not going to use much of. It's got cornering ABS that you can shut. It's got 2 separate modes for that. 6.5 inches or 6.7 inches of front suspension travel, 6.9 in the rear. So it's not huge, but it's enough that you can go have some fun. This is one of the shots that KTM had on their site. It is the bike, and they showed it was interesting, and I'm going to get into this here in a second. It's a 19-inch front wheel. It's a 17-inch rear wheel. So I think there might be a little bit of a miss there. I would have preferred to see something bigger on the front end of it to maybe say, look, we are meaning this to be a little bit more off-road capable, but we'll take just the fact that it's spoked wheels for the starters. It also has 5-inch TFT display on it right now, LED front lights, the KTM praying mantis lights that we've all seen for a number of years now. So my big thing with this is I think there's a huge miss on this. This shot here was taken, it's from their video, and they show it, someone's leaving the office, and they just happen to run through a salt mine on their way home. First off, I am not riding around salt. Yesterday was
constantly...
Yeah, it was a nice day here yesterday, and I spent my entire time in the yard practicing skill stuff because I did not want to get my bike covered in salt. So the big miss with this, and this is my thing. This is an adventure bike. This is, I mean, it's got 3.8 gallons of fuel in it. Like I said, it's got decent sized wheels. It's got spoked wheels now. The thing that the quote on KTM's website is, and this is a direct quote, the KTM 390 Adventure rewrites the rule book on what the daily commute needs to be. And I'm like, oh, you're marketing it as a commuter bike. And I mean, at that point, if like when I have to go someplace, my commute, I mean, it can involve going through some old lady's front yard, but that's it. I'm not going to be able to take this to a salt mine on my way home, no matter how far out of the way I go. So to me, I feel that's the miss. And I worry that KTM is marketing this as a commuter bike because there are some shortfalls in this. I would like to see longer travel suspension. I would like to see a 21-inch front wheel. I mean, a lot of us kind of in the adventure/dirt space would like to see some more of that stuff. And KTM, I'm sure, is keeping it like this so it matches and is more easier to bring parts over from the 390 Duke. I see it as a miss, but nonetheless, I still love this bike, and I don't feel it's necessarily a beginner bike. I think it's a bike that is just super versatile, that they maybe put the wrong label on. But I want to go out and try this. So KTM, send me one, and we'll go ahead and see how this works for you. That's my take on it. I mean, what's your thought with them saying spoked wheels and it's a commuter bike?
Well, Josh, I think you missed the whole dad joke in this whole thing. They're calling it a commuter bike, and he's literally working in the salt mines, Josh. Like, this is the ultimate dad joke marketing scheme happening all in one. I can't believe you missed it. No, I agree with you. I think it's really strange to market this as a commuter bike, even though most of the people who own these bikes are using them as commuter scooters. Josh, sorry, I hate to break it to you. The 390 is a great commuter scooter. So I think they're just kind of keeping it real. You know, it doesn't live up to your dirt bike fantasy and your adventure bike fantasy.
But it says born to race on the side.
I think it's the reality.
It says ready to race on the side. So that's to market it as a commuter bike when their thing is ready to race and they're known for loud marketing. I'm like, And to me, I just feel like they're going to miss a lot of people that would love this bike otherwise because it's a lovable bike.
Yeah. No, I dig on, you know me. I love some smaller displacement stuff. I love some dual sport bike. I'm into it. I think it looks great. I think you nailed it about the spoke wheels, cast wheels on adventure or dual sport bikes. To me, is a big no-no.
Yeah.
I think it looks great. But you're right. The marketing maybe is a little weird, but we're all gonna have to wait and see how these bikes sell, and maybe they're gonna prove us both wrong, Josh. Who
I
knows?
hope so.
So I hope so too. So with that is going to be today's show. However, real quick before we go ahead and shut this guy down, I wanted to let you know this is your early warning that we are going to be out at AIM Expo. I will be there with a film crew. We will be wandering around, hopefully getting some behind the scenes and doing some interviews, checking out some cool new product and things going on out there. So if you are headed to AIM Expo out in Las Vegas, please feel free to come by and come say, hey, we would love to see you. Hugs, high fives, and limited edition MPN pins are waiting for you. So make sure you come say, hey. I am also wearing a shirt for an event that is also happening next week at the end of the week, though, and that is Flat Out Friday and Mama Tried going on in Milwaukee. That happens at the very end of the week. So next week is super action packed. If you are in the Midwest, you had better be going to Mama Tried Flat Out Friday. If you are on the west part of the continent, I expect to see you out at AIM Expo. And with that, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.